Let's start in South Africa. The country, needless to say, is facing quite the array of problems that include weak business activity, low commodity prices and a steeply depreciated currency. Our reporter Shi Wenjing spoke to Lesetja Kganyago, the governor of the Reserve Bank of South Africa, about these issues and monetary policies under the G20 agenda.
When South Africans go to sleep, the rand doesn't go to sleep. The rand continues to trade. So in economic terms, what the rand has actually experienced is what we would call a terms of trade shock, because the price of commodities have gone down. But with these divergent monetary policies and the normalization of monetary policy in the US, what you have actually seen is a reversal of capital flows from emerging markets to the US now that the US economy is growing and it's starting to raise interest rates. So a combination of those two had an impact on emerging market currencies. And actually, last year the rand depreciated to the extent of 25%.
Economic policies of every nation can have a spillover effect. So in this respect, can we expect international coordination mechanism to play a bigger role?
Macro policy coordination, there is scope there for global coordination. That is what you would think that the global forum like the G20 is the role that it should play. Now, let's take a step back and say that when the US embarked on quantitative easing, the spillovers were almost instant, because what we saw was a surge in capital flows to emerging market economies. And what that surge meant was that the currencies of emerging markets started to appreciate. And now that the US is starting to raise rates, you are seeing capital flowing out of emerging market economies into the US. And one of the things that we then have to talk about is what kind of macroprudential policy and tools do countries employ, and how you minimize the spillover effects from that. And for a country like South Africa, the spillovers for us, it's when South Africa takes policy, it's not going to have an impact on China or on the US or on the UK or any of the big countries. But the South African policy have got implications for the region in Southern Africa.
How do you see China's role of hosting the G20 summit?
The Chinese have put a very decent G20 agenda. More importantly is that something that had fallen off the G20 agenda over the past 2 years, they have brought back, which has to do with the reform of the international financial architecture, including building global safety nets. So China is providing the leadership that is expected of a country with the economy the size of China. But also, besides the G20, let us also remember that China has got more bilateral swap lines with more countries than any of the other G20 member countries. So the agenda that China has put is it's a very decent agenda. It's a very ambitious agenda, and we will engage with that. And hopefully, when our leaders meet here in China later in the year, they will come with something that will give us a line of march.